Masters slashes prices by up to 90% to clear stores of stock before the retail disaster closed. When the first Masters store opened in 2011, in the Melbourne suburb of Braybrook, much was made of the 35,000 products inside the giant store and the wealth of well-known brands from Bosch to DeWalt and Panasonic. Woolworths will wind up its home improvement business, saying the division's losses are unsustainable. When the first Masters store opened in 2011, in the Melbourne suburb of Braybrook, much was made of the 35,000 products inside the giant store and the wealth of well-known brands from Bosch to DeWalt and Panasonic. Just over 5 years and $3.5 billion later, it was a very different sight this week. As Masters prepares to close its doors for the final time on Sunday, it has cut prices by a whopping 90% to shift the last scarix of stock from the shelves. A retail analyst told news.com.au the Masters nightmare would go down as a lesson in how not to create a new retailer. But for majority owner Woolworths, it was a headache gone as its ill-fated foray into home improvement finally spluttered to a halt. The decision was made to shutter the shops in January. But the complexity of clearing the stock and dealing with a very unhappy joint venture partner in the US Lowe's has seen the chain limp on for a year. Woolworths has said it's confident it will resolve its issues with Lowe's. In southwestern Sydney this week, one of the massive stores cut a sorry sight. The garden centre was bereft of plants, the trade counter saw no tradies, and the car park had only a smattering of cars. Next door, another store was chockers. Signs screaming everything must go and last one DAYS sick were plastered on the store's exterior. Inside, almost every aisle was cordoned off with yellow tape warning caution no entry. Just one aisle remained open as a handful of bargain hunters looked to pick the final morsels of meat from the Masters carcass. On one shelf, a single pot of Valspar paint, reduced from $16 to just $1.60, stood untaken, one of the last products for sale at the D chain. The U.S. paint group spurned Bunnings, part of Wesfarmers, for Masters, hoping to ride the new store's slipstream to success. But success never came. Other unloved products were scattered around. 2 lonely Philips strip lights lay on another shelf next to a box of steel post clamps. A USB cable vied for attention with a yellowing Australia to South Africa plug adapter. Talking to news.com.au last month, Steve Ogden, an expert in sales promotions at Deakin University, predicted Masters would ramp up the discounts. "I'm pretty damn sure they will crack as the closing day gets closer and what's left is less and less desirable. What else are they going to do with it? Come the day, they will want those places emptied completely," he said. A banner high above urged customers to take a look at the sparkling new lighting store, now inaccessible behind metal fencing. The only lighting products you could still buy were lampshades made of corrugated cardboard. Even at $6.90 down from $69, there were still no takers. Rolls of Disney wallpaper featured Minnie Mouse smiling expectantly up at shoppers. Few rescued Minnie from Masters. Customers were warned there were no refunds anymore. Once you bought it, it was yours. But while the store might look sad, the few items left is in some way a huge success. There are reports Woolworths is overjoyed and may recover a better than expected $90 in the dollar return from the fire sale of $700 million of stock. The Australian reported the closing down sale, that began in August and was conducted by Georgia Australia, had already racked up $500 million. It's another headache gone. From a stock perspective it's gone pretty well, Jeff Dart, a retail analyst at DGC Advisory told news.com.au. Woolies may well wonder why the 63 stores hadn't been as busy during their 5-year shelf life. "It's been a nightmare. I knew very early on, as soon as I went in the first store, there wouldn't be enough sales," Mr. Dart said. It was a big W retail model on a David Jones cost base. Indeed, the signs of cost creep were everywhere. Paint mixing units, now lying unused, had the Masters logo expensively embossed into them. Touchscreen TV units, imploring you to explore decorating solutions, still flashed even as there was nothing to buy. Mr. Dart said there were a multitude of reasons for Masters' demise. From a brand that was very chauvinistic to a confused pricing policy. The stores themselves were almost too shiny and clean, putting off Australians used to more rough and ready retailers. It just didn't look and feel like what one would expect from a hardware store. If you go to a Bunnings or a JB Hi-Fi, it's a bit junky with stuff here and there and special bins with $5 specials. In Masters there was no vibe of "Gee, look here, we want to sell you something." The only way to describe it was cold and impersonal. Masters was never just about home improvement. Woolworths hoped Coles owner Wesfarmers would funnel cash into Bunnings to protect it from the onslaught. In the process, depriving Coles of the cash needed for the all-important weekly discounts. The Masters project was code-named Oxygen because it was designed to suck the oxygen out of Wesfarmers. But it became known as Project Carbon Dioxide because Woolworths started breathing in their own fumes. The period between the announcement of Woolworths' entry into the sector and the opening of the first doors gave Bunnings 2 years to get match fit, said Mr. Dart, which they did with gusto, investing in stores and training up staff. The sheer amount of time dedicated to and cash lavished on Masters clouded Woolworths' judgment, he added. If they'd pulled the plug 3 years ago, he estimated they could have saved between $1.5 and $2 billion of the $3.5 billion eventually spent. Of the 5,500 Masters staff, just over 2,500 have asked to be redeployed within Woolworths, with around 1,700 finding new jobs. Some of the stores will become Bunnings stores, others have been purchased in an $835 million deal by the Home Consortium, which includes companies behind retailers Spotlight and Chemist Warehouse. Expect to see some of the store's floor space divided up between these other retailers. When news.com.au visited, most customers walked away from Masters empty-handed. But one savvy shopper was happy. Had decided to not choose what paint color he wanted until he saw what was left. As the sun set, the shopper wheeled the trolley, stacked with tins that cost just $2 each, to his car. It was probably the biggest sale Masters had made that day. Georgia, Australia was contacted for comment. Benedict.Brook@news.com.au